Welcome to the Purposeful in Life podcast, where our mission is to help individuals and organizations find their purpose so that they may live a life that is fulfilling and inspired in and out of work. Your hosts, Christina Hall and myself, Garrett Willey, are passionate to inspire, teach, mentor, and serve our community. We have 42 years of combined experience as entrepreneurs and in international corporations. Both of us have military backgrounds. Myself, Garrett, as a commissioned officer with over 9 years of service, and Christina as a military spouse of over 15 years. Welcome to Purposeful in Life, where together we go on the journey of discovering a life filled with purpose and intention. Welcome back to Purposeful in Life with
Christina Hall
and Garrett Willey and our guest,
Thomas Gillen.
Yes, today we're going to have our first guest on. He's a dear friend of mine, Thomas is, and we told you in the last episode that we were going to talk about the celery test and ask Thomas some questions after we kind of describe what that is and let him give us some feedback on it. And the reason for that was we were all talking at a networking event, and Thomas goes, "What about the celery tests?" And Christina and I are like, "Well, it sounds familiar, but we got no idea what you're talking about." Although I don't know if I admitted that, but that's what I was thinking. So
I'm glad I wasn't the only one.
I could see it. You're like an open book. And so anyways, I read about it, went back into the book and digested a little bit more on it. And I was like, you know what? I've been doing this for a while anyways. And I think it's best if we describe what the celery test is first rather than me like give it away. But yeah, we'll get to that in a second. In the last episode, we were talking about creating a clarity of a why statement. So we want you guys to help you guys articulate what your why statement is. And you're probably just feeling like, oh, it's just scratching the surface. And that's okay, because it is. Like, we need to devise what our why statement is so that we can live with purpose and intention, right? If you say, this is what I stand for, because if you don't stand for something, you can fall for anything. So that's what we're here for. Who said that? Was that Winston Churchill or something? Who knows?
No
It doesn't matter, but it's a great statement. So we want to be able to live our lives with our why and purpose in service of others and help you guys do the same. In this episode, obviously, Thomas is going to be with us to go through the stuff we just talked about. And we're going to ask him some questions and examples that will help in facilitating that process for him. And he might have an idea of what his why statement is. We'll love to hear it if he's got it. Mm-hmm. Do you have it?
I do.
Awesome.
Before we get into all this stuff, why don't you tell us what your why statement is?
To engage, challenge, and inspire people so that they can be the best possible version of themselves today.
Wow.
I think you might be on it. Yeah. That's pretty good. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about, and we also want to make sure that you understand. I got this little quote that I'm going to throw up there from Thomas Edison. Go ahead and throw that up there real quick, because when we were talking about finding your why in the process, the celery test is about how to execute that process, and vision without execution is hallucination. In other words, don't just talk about it, do something. And the celery test is a simple framework for us helping to make decisions. And so, are you comfortable enough to tell about the celery test, or do you want me to tell the story?
Why don't you tell the story, Garrett?
Okay. All right, I'll do my best with it. I have some notes here. I might look down a little bit, so bear with me. So, celery test is about putting your why into action, and just discovering your why is just the beginning of the process. Because in order to enjoy all the benefits of having a why or purpose statement or mission statement for your life, you'll need to have the courage and the discipline to use it in your daily actions. And that's where the Thomas Edison says vision without execution is a hallucination. And there's an ideal order for implementing your why statement, and it all starts with you as an individual. So our natural tendency is to start with the tangible. So people always start with the what, and then maybe break it down to the how, and they never really get to the why, because it's easy to see the what, and it's harder to define something that is more on our emotional side of our minds and has less to do with like concrete stuff, especially for guys, because we're all about like attacking something, right? So we're all about the concrete, the what. And we hear it over and over again from people when we share what our why statement is. They go, "Oh, this is mine," and they're talking about the what's. They're not talking about anything beyond that. They try to. I think people are scratching the surface a lot of times when we're sharing with them, and it's great because scratching the surface is the first step on figuring out. Like I'll hear essence of it. Thomas has got a really good clue on his why statement, and I think he's right on the right track. So that's perfect there. And so in time, you'll be able to use your statement as a filter for deciding on what your actions are or looking back on what you're doing to see if it's actually fitting that, right? Because then you can look back at your day and be like, what did I do today that fit with my purpose? And it can't always be like we were talking about in the last episode where you have to go to work because you got to pay the bills, right? So it's great when you can discover your why statement and then you can look at implementing that into your daily activities. And, that's what we want to try to help you with. But at the same time, working towards being able to have that be your full-time goal would obviously be the essence of it and not having to wait till you're 68 years old to do it. So the metaphor that we would like to share with you is Simon Sinek's metaphor, and it's called the celery test. So imagine if we're all at a dinner party and you're sharing with people, and then the guests there have all these great advice, ideas for you on how to create this perfect meal. And one of your friends goes, "You got to have M&Ms in it," right? They're the best. They taste great. You'll never go wrong with having M&Ms at your dinner party, right? So you're like, okay, M&Ms. And then another person's like rice milk, and they start telling you all about the history of rice milk and why it's so healthy for you and how it means the world to them. And you got to have rice milk at your dinner party. Otherwise, you're making a mistake because you're not taking care of people. Another person's like Kit Kats, and that was Christina because she always has to have the chocolate, so it's the Kit Kats. You got to have the Kit Kats.
You gotta have the chocolate.
The chocolate, it's probably German chocolate, but we're using Kit Kats because that's what Simon Sinek uses. Maybe if we thought about this ourselves, we would have had like some German chocolate here, but I just thought of it now because that would be hilarious.
Next time.
And then the fourth person's like, you got to have celery. There's nothing like celery. Maybe this is like the peanut butter and raisins on top or something when for your kids. Did you ever do that as a kid? Your mom make?
I think you're on your own on this one.
Yes.
Your mothers didn't love you. I'm sorry, guys. So you go into the grocery store. You picked up your M&Ms. You picked up your Kit Kats. You picked up your rice milk, and you picked up your celery. And you're standing in the checkout line, and everyone sees what you have, but no one can see what you believe. And what I'm getting at with this is because you went in there to buy everything. Now, for a moment, let's imagine that you know what your why is. And let's say that in this instance, your why is to be healthy, and to only buy things for your life that are healthy for you. So if you take that step back and you're like, this is my why, is to be healthy and only bring healthy things into my life, you don't buy the German chocolate, maybe the German chocolate, dark chocolate. Dark chocolate's supposed to be healthy for you, but you don't buy the Kit Kats and you don't buy the M&Ms. So now when you go up to the line, you have the rice milk and the celery. So when somebody else comes up to you and they see what you have, they can be like, "Hey, you're healthy. I'm healthy. I like this," and they start talking to you because now you can have common ground with one another. Right? And what that creates is that the opportunity to connect with somebody, like to have a relationship with them, be friends, or to maybe have them be your customer, where you provide them a service and sell to them, or perhaps they can refer you to somebody else because now they connect with you and you can share with one another what your beliefs are and where you come together on that, and then they know how to share that with other people because they're like, "Hey, I trust this guy or this girl because they believe the same things I do about health and wellness."
Yeah, I mean, it's all about resonating with people. I mean, think about it. You're on vacation, you're half a world away, and you bump into that person that's from the United States, or even more specifically, Washington, or in your case, if you bump into somebody
Germany.
from Germany,
Oh yeah.
immediately you have this unbridled connection to them. You start talking about similarities, and they resonate with you. And it's the same thing with this, is, you're able, if you know your purpose, and if you test great content. Kit Kats are great. And for the person who's looking for that sweet tooth to be filled, it's an awesome item. But it may not resonate with you. So being able to connect with those people, it builds that sense of community.
Yeah, and that's so the celery test is just a metaphor, right? Obviously, those items don't mean a whole lot. It's just what we're trying to say is that when you can articulate what your why or your purpose is, and then you take steps or actions, like you're trying to focus that whatever you do in your life, that it flows with that purpose in mind, then other people can see it. And then when you do something that's outside of that flow, other people can see it as well. Because if you are up on the soapbox saying, this is what I believe celery and rice milk, the rice milk sounds disgusting. Anyways, but if you're up there saying, this is what I believe, and then you do something outside of that, people are like, they can see that that's not authentic for who you are. Because you were vulnerable and shared with the world, this is what I believe and who I want to work with and who I want to serve and how I want to be perceived in life and what I want to do and how I want to contribute.
Same thing with business. I mean, when you see companies that have a very clear foundation on who they are and why they're here, and then something happens and they change and they try to be something in that industry that they're not, the loyal customer base, they know. And typically that's where you see companies start to waver, and in some cases they don't make it through.
Yeah, and in other cases they degrade their employees too, because you made me think of back. I worked at Home Depot, and the first year I started there, the original founders it was when I was in college, was Bernie and Arthur, and they started the company. They bought a warehouse. They literally had empty boxes behind stuff because they only had so much money to buy inventory. But they were doing the first big box home improvement store was Home Depot, and all the years later, when they finally got to the point where they were retiring, they were building hundreds of stores a year, and they just, like 30 plus years, I don't know the exact timeline, but they had been doing it for a long time, and they decided to hire somebody else. So they hired this guy, Bob Nardelli, out of Sears. And Nardelli came in as a corporate leader. He ran Sears, probably into the ground, so it's not too brilliant to have them hire someone like that. But they brought in somebody whose focus was on his own gain. And, he didn't have the huge growth that created stock splits and everything like that from when I started. I was able to have like a Ducati because of stock options as a college student, and like got paid like better. Like I think I got paid better like 18 years ago as a college student than they get paid now. And I had the stock options on top of it. So that means I was making like the mid $20 an hour range with the stock options, pushing carts as a college student. Of course, it's because I came out of the Army, so they probably hired me a little bit higher out of that. But nonetheless, it was like, and then when I was working there, they're like, hey, you can make changes. If you want to do a display or change where something is in the store or whatever, just do it. Like the regular employee had the authority because they said it's your store, right? And then when it switched over to Bob Nardelli, the company was just going downhill, downhill, downhill. And I remember seeing, because I took a bunch of business classes, on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, it said, give the company back to its employees. So the whole world could see that the company had gone off purpose. And they didn't have the language for that then, but that's what it obviously was. Because before it was like, this is a company owned and run business by its employees. And it's for the employees because when they're taken care of, everyone else is taken care of. And that's why they grew to have thousands of stores. And then it became a corporation, and went off purpose. And then my last year there, somebody came and asked me, I was flat stacking lumber, and I did like the ordering and all the manager positions for it, but I wasn't the manager. They just had me do the work because I could. And I was flat stacking lumber, and some guy came up to me and was like, hey, can you show me where something is? And I was like, yeah, it's over in such and such aisle, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, that's not very good service. And I was like, well, my name is Garrett Willie. And Sean is the manager on duty. He's always in his office. If you go to the light cloud and turn right, go to the back, you'll find him sitting there doing nothing. Tell him I sent you. I didn't care if I got fired because I didn't love the job anymore. I was like, it'll be a blessing if I get fired. I didn't sell it to the guy, but that's what I was thinking, right? And they probably wouldn't because, again, the big corporate thing, they'd just be like, slap on the wrist, whatever. But what happened is I didn't care anymore, because when employees they can see the vision of the business and they know that they're cared for, right? And they can resonate with like, oh, we're all here working together to build something bigger, then they can come behind it. But when an employee is just a cog in the wheel, or like you can be replaced on the drop of a hat and it doesn't matter, like when I was in the car business selling cars, they treated employees as if we can hire 400 guys just like you. And that didn't necessarily, with me, by the end of my car business career, I was doing like all repeat and referral business. But most people don't do that. They just literally are like waiting for people to come in. And so that industry, I left that industry just because I didn't like the mentality behind it. And I think us as individuals, we need to like try to make sure whoever we have influence over, that we can do that with like purpose. And so that's what the celery test is about. And I'm glad you were part of that. I'm glad you challenged us to look into it, because it was like, okay, now we're able to, just like everything else, put into words what it is that we were already doing, but then it helps identify it even more, because I wasn't really, I knew that I was like testing stuff like, oh, I'm thinking about it all the time, every day. Like, is that working towards my purpose? And oh, I'm so much happier now and more fulfilled because I'm trying to do everything towards my purpose, you know?
Well, there's so much great content out there. I mean, my wish list on audiobooks is wild, but not everything applies. And there has to be, you have to use this process to find out what makes the most sense for where you're headed. You may come across something that it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense for you. And so this test allows you to process that and really figure out where the best way for you to exert yourself is.
Yes. Thomas, what inspires you to get up in the morning?
That is a great question. And it's a
I should
process.
have asked you ahead of time. That was like the one
Right.
question I didn't give you any head.
Bum.
Yeah, let's throw it hard.
It's funny. What got me out of bed in my 20s is not the same thing that got me out of bed in my 30s. Again, you look back at my why statement about engaging and challenging and helping people. It's all comes down to an effect. I've worked in a few different industries and I've tried a few different things, and they're just jobs, and a lot of time was wasted just going through the motions. I'd get up, clock in, clock out. Every month was the same. We hit budget or we didn't hit budget. When I was in construction, it was the one project to the next project, and it was just a repetition. And then I started really digging into the little moments within those moments that meant the most for me. And it was when I had that opportunity to help someone learn a new trade, or had an opportunity to coach someone through a life moment and challenge someone to be a better person. Recently I had a coworker, I was able to really push and drive them to start to set goals for themselves. And it felt good. It felt good to be that challenging aspect in their life. Every day we're compounding interest, and we're either compounding positive or negative interest. And I just want to help be that tipping point for as many people as I can to be more positive interest in their life.
So if you were able to get up every morning knowing that your purpose was being fulfilled, where you're encouraging, and say that one more time because I can't read my own writing.
Engaging, challenging, and inspiring people so that they can be the best possible versions of themselves today.
So if you're engaging, inspiring, and helping people to become the best possible person they could be today, what would that look like? Like, how would you be able to do that on a daily basis?
I think that concept is somewhat fluid, because it does change from person to person. I may have someone that I can just see that they're wearing the weight of the world on themselves, and they're, that maybe life is just taking them for a spin like it has us all. And I'm able just to encourage them, give them some great content that they may or may not look into, but if they do, I know that it's going to help them get through that immediate challenge. It may be, mentoring someone into a position where that they can see some financial freedom, or they may be able to go out and start setting goals for themselves that they were afraid to start challenging themselves with.
And when you do have that opportunities, like at work or in just general in life, you think that that's the part that you feel the most fulfilled from?
Absolutely. I can use a great example. I had an associate a while ago, and we were coming up against some challenges with scheduling, and this individual had a separate trade outside of what we were doing, and they kept coming to me and saying, this is what I need. I need the weekends off. I have to have that time with my family. It's very important to me. And unfortunately, in a retail environment at that time, this wasn't a possibility. And this was a challenge that kind of went back and forth for a while. And finally, I just said, what is the right thing for this person? How can I make this person the best possible version of themselves today? And so, knowing that they had another trade craft, I actually went out, spoke with a few, managers and owners of shops in the area that were in that trades, got them the opportunity to turn in their resume. They ended up staying. We worked it out. But I was able to bring it to him and say, you know what, this may not be your best option. I would hate to lose you. You're a good employee, but I want you to be better, and I know you're going to be happier if you have that time with your family and you feel like that was very important to them. So being able to engage that person and really challenge them and help them make a decision on where they wanted to be was a huge step for me as well.
So, in other words, you were willing to lose a good employee so that they could be able to
Improve their life.
Improve their life.
Absolutely.
I like that.
That's
that-
amazing.
Christina, you get to ask the rest of the questions because I know Thomas already. So,
You do.
yeah.
All right. You already talked about a few of those things, but which hurdles have you personally faced, and how did you overcome them?
Pretty much my 20s. No.
Try to be specific. Remember the last
Yes.
episode?
I'm joking. I'm joking. No, but really, it's important. My 20s, I chased a lot of things. I tried a lot of things. I goofed around. I wasted a lot of time. It comes down to that, like that compounding interest. That balance was out of whack at that point in my life. Like I had too many negative habits and too many negative daily routines that outbalanced the positives. And so even if I had something that was really impactful for someone, it was devalued by the decisions I was making outside of that. And so really like the tipping point for me was when I turned 30 and I realized how I was going to get to where I wanted to be or start taking those steps. I had to start building value in myself and in my life to have credibility to be able to speak to. Because if you're the guy who goes out to the bar all weekend and has tons of great barroom wisdom, not always the person people turn to for big life decisions.
No, not really. Like, was there, when you said you just realized, was there like a light bulb moment or anything specific that happened?
Yeah. So, and this is the only place you might get me to cry. But no, I had recently stepped away from a partnership with at that time, a friend in the construction industry. I was stepping into another role with a more retail-based company, and the opportunity struck to move across the state and take a promotion. At that point, money I was expecting from leaving that business did not come through, but I took a leap and I packed up my van, threw a mattress in the back, and in the middle of winter, I headed over to the Tri-Cities, Washington, which is a pretty cold place. I made it work. I was determined, and that was kind of my bottom. It was accumulation of a lot of really bad decisions I'd made through my early adulthood, and for me, it clicked, and I said, I could feel my life was out of balance. I knew I wanted to do something. I knew I wanted to go after something, but I couldn't put into words what that was. And so I just started focusing on very simple daily habits, making sure that I was eating right, that I was going to the gym, that I was putting, my faith first at that point. I was taking those necessary steps to balance my life day by day. And that's the thing about it is it doesn't happen overnight. It's been a journey since then, and every year it gets better. There's the setbacks, and we have our disappointments. But as long as you scale yourself right in life, that you have enough positive, it's going to carry that momentum will carry you.
Is that the point in your life when you gave up alcohol?
It is actually, yeah. 4 years ago, I just cold turkey decided. I looked at where I was at, what it had contributed to my 20s, and then the challenges I had faced from it, and then I said, what the habits you form in your 20s create the lifestyle in your 30s and promote the future in your 40s. And I wanted a better 40 promoted. So,
was there something specific that happened with alcohol that you discovered that it was really not good for you and was causing you to head down a road that you didn't want to go?
Oh, you're working on this one, aren't you? I like it. I've had some challenges, just like anybody who suffers from, alcoholism, which I'm an alcoholic in recovery, 4 years. I look at, again, alcohol itself is not a bad thing. I think it just amplified bad decisions I was making, because I still made the bad decisions even when I was sober. I was, again, loading my book with negative things that were outweighing the positives, all the good stuff that I had, the core, the want that I was looking to influence people and really change people's direction in life. It was just being outweighed by alcohol and partying and all that good stuff.
Did you free up a lot more time since then that you could use to develop yourself?
Certainly did. And that was part of that discovery process, being able to And I challenge you, and I challenge you both, and I challenge anybody who, you are the sum value of your actions in a day. Make a pros and cons list and think about everything you did yesterday and put it in one category or the next and see how that tallies up. And I guarantee you the person that it tallies up with more pros than cons is going somewhere. They have a focus. They're determined. The person who kind of is in balance and they have an equal amount of, this wasn't really a helpful or this hurt me versus, this was really a great option. Those people, they're probably still going in the right direction, but not as quickly. And then you'll see people like I was in my 20s where it was off the charts for cons, and the one or two positives each day I contributed didn't really matter because the majority of my day was lost to poor decisions.
Wow. I'm just blown away right now. That's awesome what you're saying. What I might be interested in when you said you just dove in head first, you quit cold turkey. Wow. How did you really get started into personal development? Like books, seminars, how did you go about it?
Mentorship. I had people who believed in me. I had people that were saying things to me for years. In that time, I wasn't able to receive it, but later on in life, I think I went back and processed. A very dear friend said to me, Thomas, you have so many great things to offer this world, but all this stuff you're doing, it discredits you. And you need to start putting value in yourself in order so that you can fulfill your purpose. And that person knew it at that time. I didn't, but they did. I think it's all about breaking it down to simple. In my case, it worked. I did it. I quit cold turkey, but there was a process of, I found the very key important things in my life and I focused on those. Work, gym, church. For me, that was how I transcended that problem in my life. And again, not perfect, and we still work on it today. But the best advice I can give for anybody trying to have that clear, cut and dry moment is just break everything down to the simplest form of it, and focus on that, and focus on it well, and then expand on that.
Is that tied to a story of yours where someone specifically impacted your life and helped you get to that next level of growth?
I think, again, it comes down to I've had multiple mentors in my life, people that have contributed. I've had instructors through a trade school, apprenticeship programs. I have had aunt and uncle who invested in me heavily when I was in high school and had no place to go. They gave me the ability to actually graduate. I can trace it back to, my first true act of just giving that I had received would have been in Lima, Peru. I was down there teaching English on a mission trip when I was 18. And in that time, it's a third world country that people don't have a lot. And this young boy, I want to say about 12, 13 years old. His name was Gabriel. Him and I really bonded well. He was this pastor's son there in Lima. And at the end of our month-long trip there, he came up to me and he gave me a soccer jersey. And bear in mind that they had a TV that was like 13 black and white and could barely get one channel. The average household brought in about $3,000 equivalent American a year to live off of. And these jerseys were not cheap. It was probably his most prized object, and he gave it to me. And in that moment, it just really changed. Even through all the crud and the stuff that I put myself through, I will always remember that. That changed the course of my life. That he could give up something so important just in the sake of just that spirit.
To show gratitude.
To show gratitude, yes.
And are you hoping that as you go forward in life that you can impact people in that way again?
Absolutely. I am in my place of most fulfillment when I am able, and even in the smallest services to people. I think that is, it's really why we're here. And it has to be a balance. I think the hardest that certain people have key personality types where they want to serve and serve and serve and serve and serve. But remember, you have to be served as well. There needs to be a balance of that. And the issue we've probably see most is when people fall out of balance with that. Either they're only serving and they burn themselves out, or they're only being served and they're being enabled. And so it's all about that balance, allowing yourself to serve others and to be served.
Sometimes it's harder to receive than it is to give.
Yes. guilty of it.
or to receive even acknowledgement for giving is really hard for me. That's probably the thing that I feel most uncomfortable with, because it's like no,
No.
I don't
No.
no. So now I just laid it out there. So now I'm gonna really get embarrassed.
I might get you to cry.
Oh, that's easy. That's easy because I'm a passionate person.
Absolutely.
And I love you guys. And I want you guys to succeed and really dig deep to that purpose that you have so that you can share it with others. Because that's what I see with your Peru story and with your mentorship of other individuals to help them get, even when it isn't for you, your best interest, because you're looking for their best interest first. That's essential. Because when you're doing that and it's outside of yourself, that's when we get the most out of life. And so that's what we're here for, guys. And really thank you for coming on the show,
Yes,
Thomas.
Thank you for having me.
And that's where Purposeful in Life is, to try to help you guys here. We wanted to bring on a guest, and we're going to bring on more guests in the future. But it's, we have content that we want to cover to help teach you guys and mentor you and guide you guys, the listeners, and whoever is willing to participate with us through finding purpose and intention in life. And I think a big part of that is going to be when we can share this with others, like Thomas coming on the show and sharing us his heart and where he had the biggest impacts. Because then when you're listening, you can hear that in your own life and think about those stories yourself. So we're going to continue to do that. And we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks when we do our next recording. And we're going to have a gentleman on who, his name is Russell, and he does hypnotherapy and counseling with people. And he's really interesting. And we're going to talk about another book that we'll put some posts on Facebook and Instagram on that too, so you guys can read it ahead of time if you want, and we'll tell some stories together. And he's just going to spend the whole hour with us for the 2 episodes, so that we can really dig deep and the marrow of life type thing. So anyways, I really appreciate you joining us, and please give us some feedback, because when you contact us and you tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, that's okay too. And things that you're interested in learning more about. Obviously we have this theme about finding purpose, but there's a lot that can go into that, and it's all about really finding a personal development niche, like you said, where it's give and receive, and we need to learn how to do that with one another. So we thank you so much. Our contact information is down at the bottom, whether through our websites or there might be a phone number on there as well. Feel free to get in touch with us from that or Facebook, and we're happy to just share ourselves with you and really help each other with purpose and intention. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.